It started with a flicker, a shadow in the corner of Elizabeth's eye. She was in her kitchen preparing dinner when she first saw it, a dark figure just beyond her line of sight, standing motionless near the doorway. But when she turned to look directly at it, the shadow vanished, leaving her questioning whether she had seen anything at all. Dismissing it as a trick of the light, she continued with her evening, unaware that this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, the sightings became more frequent. The shadows appeared in the mirrors, behind doors, and in the darkened corners of her home. Always just out of reach, they moved with a speed that defied logic, vanishing the moment she tried to focus on them. Elizabeth's nerves began to fray. Sleep eluded her as she lay awake, sensing their presence in her bedroom, watching her with unseen eyes. The more she tried to ignore them, the more persistent they became. Elizabeth's once cozy home became a place of terror. She felt the shadow people everywhere, whispers in the hallway, a cold breath on her neck, the creaking of floorboards in the dead of night. They began to invade her dreams, dark figures looming over her, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. Each morning she woke drenched in sweat, the shadows growing darker, more tangible with each passing day. She started to avoid her own home, spending hours at work or in crowded places, but the shadows followed her, their presence lurking just out of sight. Desperate, Elizabeth sought help. She visited doctors, psychologists, even a priest, but none could offer an explanation. They dismissed her experiences as stress or hallucinations, but Elizabeth knew better. The shadows were real, and they were growing bolder. She began to lose time, waking up in strange places with no memory of how she got there. Her friends and family noticed the change in her, the gaunt look in her eyes, the way she flinched at every movement in her peripheral vision. As the shadows closed in, Elizabeth decided to take matters into her own hands. Armed with a camera and a desperate need for answers, she set out to document the entities haunting her. She set up cameras in every room, determined to catch the shadow people on film. But what she discovered was far worse than she had imagined. The footage showed dark figures creeping closer and closer to her, even standing over her as she slept. But the most terrifying discovery came when she reviewed footage of herself, moments when she would stop, stare blankly ahead, and whisper in that same unknown language. The shadows weren't just haunting her, they were trying to take her. With the realization that she was losing herself to the shadow people, Elizabeth made a final, desperate attempt to escape. She packed her bags and fled to a remote cabin, hoping that distance would break the connection. For a few days, the quiet and solitude seemed to work. The shadows didn't follow her, and she began to feel like herself again. But it was only an illusion. One night, as she sat by the fire, she saw them. Dozens of shadow people standing just outside the cabin, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They had found her. Elizabeth was never seen again. The cabin was found empty, with no signs of a struggle, but the locals tell of strange sightings in the woods, dark figures that move swiftly through the trees, always just out of sight. They say that if you listen closely at night, you can hear whispers in a language that chills the soul, and if you're unlucky enough to catch a glimpse of the shadow people, it's already too late.